And it is my great pleasure to have on stage Jamie Anderson and Lee Sullivan.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, it's very nice to be here, and I'm thrilled to be talking about all the wonderful things, and it's nice to see some familiar faces in the audience. Nice to see you guys.
So a very recent project that the two of you have been involved with is the new epic collection of Fireball Xl5 comics that is mainly Fireball Xl5, but also has appearances by many other Super Marionation characters from Captain Scarlet, from Thunderbirds, and from Stingray. You guys have already released a couple of UFO compilations, but I guess with this one, by involving Lee, it's a mixture of the old and the new. How did the project come about?
Well, yes, I'm the old, obviously.
You're the new.
And, it came about because Jamie asked me, basically, and we've spent a bit of time together over the last couple of years, and one of the projects that Jamie wanted to do was initially, because you have the rights to publish the TV21 material, was to put maybe 2 or 3 of the stories, I think it was maybe 4 of the stories from the original TV21 run of Fireball Xl5 stories out as maybe a mini graphic novel, and that I might do some interlinking, I think even just select them at first and then do some interlinking, few interlinking pages, and it kind of started to snowball after that, and ended up being the entire run of TV21 and Countdown and a few specials, and then I managed to wangle 17-page comic strip into it, which was originally the TV21 idea was that it was all happening in the same universe, which we now call the Anderverse, I suppose, or the Anderson universe. And what they used to do was occasionally have cameos by, say, Captain Black would be in Stingray, but really only just kind of hints at the fact that they were all connected universes. And we decided to take that and run with it a bit, and for the first time actually have a story that properly involved all of those things. So you've got a Fireball Xl5 story, but it actually has proper featuring appearances, and they're involved in the story by Thunderbirds and Stingray and Captain Scarlet, and there are a few other little bits in there as well. So, but I think that's how it came about.
The bit that Lee's missing out is that I said, do you want to draw a new strip? And he went, well, I'm obviously writing it as well. And I was given some options in that matter. But I knew he'd do a good job because he's such a massive nerd in the best possible way.
Yes.
And like you say, Alex, yes, Lee is the old and I'm the new in this arrangement.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got a lovely opportunity with the license from ITV to get the shows out there that have been maybe considered lesser over time. So obviously Thunderbirds is always the jewel in the crown, and everybody always wants Thunderbirds, and ITV really want licensees to make Thunderbird stuff, and it's very rare that anybody actually does Fireball Xl5. But the art is so beautiful, and there's so much Mike Noble work in there, and Lee's connection to Mike Noble made that a very natural thing to tie together, and I knew that the visuals would work as well. So it was a lovely collaboration.
Absolutely. And as the creator of this new strip, did you read some of the old strips and think, well, I'd really like to know what happened next? What happens just off stage? What happens when?
Yes, well, the thing is that actually Jamie was exaggerating. I never even said I'm going to write it. I just went away and did the synopsis without anybody actually asking me to do it at all. But the thing was that there are lovely jumping off points in the strips. I looked at the strips in particular that had crossovers already in them, these very, very tiny crossovers. And I started to think, well, how can I stitch these together into one, well, just to extend the story, and also can I combine them into one story? So what I managed to do, I don't know if it's absolutely successful, but I've got a disclaimer page in the book as well, which explains how all this stuff can actually work, even if you don't think it does. because I covered all the bases there. So there are these little jumping off points, and as I started to look at them and thinking, well, okay, so if this is a Fireball Xl5 story, we've got to kind of somehow involve these other guys, all the other services, their secret organisations and so on. We've got to try and involve them and then have it be still Fireball Xl5 story. So that was the first bit. But actually, it sounds terrible, but as soon as I started to think about it, the ideas, there were so many ideas that I had to kind of trim it all back. And we did 17 pages, which is more than I was asked to do. I still charged for them, obviously. But once I'd got them, once I'd started the story, it kind of just things suggested themselves. So it was a lovely process. I've never written a comic book story before, which is why I was ideally suited to think that I could do it. Because there isn't a rampant ego going on much. But I really, really enjoyed it, and there were so many things that you could do with it, and it was really fantastic. Having been on the receiving end of scripts for the last nearly 40 years, it was lovely to have the power to move the characters around and make them do things that I'd always wanted to see happen. And some things I hadn't thought about happening. One of the things that was particularly good fun was that I was playing around, purely for research purposes, you understand. I was playing around with my Fireball Xl5 and Thunderbird 3 models, and Chris Thompson, who'd actually done the technical manuals and stuff, I'd seen this thing, and they were both about the same length, in theory, these two spaceships. And I was just playing around with the models, and I thought, oh, look, they fit together really nicely. That's got to be part of the story, and that became what here we are. You can see a sort of mating ritual going on here between Thunderbird 3 and Fireball Xl5. Lord knows what the yes, stop it at once. So there was all that, and then there was all kinds of interesting things that came up, like Steve, Zodiac, and Venus. They're a kind of item, I guess. It's difficult to say, but they might be at it. But also, no, you don't think so. And that's based on what, madam? Oh, right, okay. That was that?
Venus has taste.
Venus has taste, yeah. Yeah, Steve's a bit of a dog, isn't he, really? Yeah, okay. But there was that kind of thing, and what I thought was interesting was because part of it is Captain Scarlet also being rescued, which was part of one of the original TV21 stories. He was rescued by a Fireball Xl5 craft, and what I've done is taken that story and extend it, so en route home, things don't go quite very well. And I'm not going to give away much by saying Captain Scarlet dies again. Twice. In 17 pages. It's a hell of it. So it was great fun doing that. But as soon as you start to think, well, so Steve and Venus are sort of an item, or maybe not, but let's, for the sake of purposes of argument, say they are. And Captain Scarlet comes along, and Venus is thawing out Captain Scarlet, because he's as stiff as a board when he comes on the ship. And so she's kind of interested in this lovely, handsome guy who's coming back to life. And then Steve starts to get a little kind of, well, hang on a minute. There's a bit of sexual tension in Fireball Xl5, possibly for the first time ever.
I think you should be limiting some of this to a fan fiction group on the internet.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible temptation, and I gave into it completely.
And obviously, if someone was to visit your stall in Artist Alley and look at your recent
yes.
you're someone...
Thank you. I'm glad you agree they are.
You're someone who's obviously made a number of kind of single images of the various Gerry characters. When it came to doing the comic strip, was that also kind of scratching an itch? That having done the single images, that are just kind of a snapshot, to be able to tell a story with the characters, was it something you'd be wanting to do? Yes,
I actually did nearly a 5-year run on Thunderbirds comic in the past, but that was for a much more junior level of style and a more. Yeah, that's right. And a more junior audience. And when I did it, I loved doing it, but I was kind of a bit unsatisfied with what I'd done and hoped that one day I might get a chance to do something a lot more along the lines of TV21, which, for those of you who don't know, was an amazing comic in the 1960s, and Gerry Anderson's production company, Century 21 Productions, put it out, and it was where all these comic strips come from. And I thought, yeah, well, I did a nice job, but it wasn't as good as that. It wasn't the best I could do. So this opportunity came along. I was really, really happy to do it. But of course, then I knew it was going to appear alongside and in between Mike Noble's beautiful work. He's my absolute hero, comic strip artist, and was also my friend for the last few years of his life. And we worked together a few times. But also there are people like Frank Hampson, and there's all kinds of Brian Lewis. It's just endless procession of these really great comic strip artists, and then there's me. And I kind of, the way I see it is that I'm not standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm looking over their shoulders at what they're doing still. But it was a real privilege to do it, but it also. I had to be on my toes, couldn't turn in any old rubbish, a bit more high quality rubbish.
And the original strips that were reprinted in the book, the quality reproduction is fantastic. Were you able to get hold of the original artwork, or has it got to the point now that if you have a decent copy of the comics, that scanning and reproduction now actually can accurately reproduce them?
That's a slightly awkward question. Thank you, Alex. No, so all of the original TV21 artboards that still exist have gone from various newspaper archives to other archives to various vaults, and they are now pretty much inaccessible. And I know when somebody last visited, it might have been the Mirror Group, possibly before it was sold last time, a 0x board was being used to bridge a gap in the floor where there was a puddle, which is heartbreaking to hear. And so really the fate of most of those boards is relatively unknown. So trying to access them is really hard. Even if we could access them, we couldn't access all of them. And then you end up having some boards that look a certain quality, some that don't. So Shaki Lalekon, who is our kind of go-to comics guy, and Stephen Carey, who's done all the touch-up and the fixing and the de-screening and all that clever stuff that I don't understand at all, have worked to make sure that there's a really consistent look across all of them. There are some strips where the registration might be slightly out, but that is an authentic 1960s experience. So hopefully it doesn't detract too much. So it's consistent, and they have done a huge amount of work between them to get the best possible source material.
And obviously, your entire life you've been immersed, in kind of your dad's creative output. Had you read all of these comics before, or were you reintroduced to some of these scripts for the first time?
Awkward.
Finding the book?
My exposure to TV21 was quite limited, Alex, in the past. Well, bear in mind, growing up with the least nostalgic man in the history of mankind, that was Dad. He just didn't keep anything. It's not like I grew up in a household that had a full TV21 archive, or really even anything. I had Lady Penelope and Parker in a bin bag in my wardrobe. Even they didn't see the light of day. He just didn't keep anything else. So TV21 has been a very gradual thing that I've seen over the years, and seen a kind of growing passion for it. And again, people like Shaki, and people like Lee, and then obviously meeting Mike Noble through Lee, which was really amazing, and just to see the impact that it had when there was no home entertainment. It was the home entertainment, really, of the 1960s. So it's been a case of completely revisiting it and seeing just how much more grown up, I suppose, the strips are than the TV show was. And then to happily come and do this new stuff has been great. So I'll just take you back just very briefly to my childhood. 8-year-old me, enormous Doctor Who fan, very irritating for Dad. And on my bedroom wall, all sorts of Doctor Who posters, but the absolute centrepiece, the most important one of all, immediately above my bed, was a Dalek and Cyberman battle in space. And I had no idea who did this. It was an amazing image, and I just loved it so much. Turned out all these years later, it was this man who did it. So there's a lovely thing that my favourite comic image ever growing up was done by Lee, and now he's come to do this. So it's all worked out really beautifully.
Yeah. Well, as you brought up the topic of Doctor Who, I can't not ask Lee, having returned to the comic strip in Doctor Who magazine after a gap of 20 years, you are now the first person, one of the first people to tell new adventures with the 14th Doctor while we're waiting for him to appear on TV.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a weird and exciting responsibility?
Well, no pressure. Yeah, I started doing Doctor Who comic strips 34 years ago, and then they stopped giving them to me 20 years ago. And in the intervening gap, I've done a bit of David Tennant for Battles in Time. But I had kind of figured, well, I probably won't be doing any more Doctor Who comic strips. And then, one of the things that happens is when you're lucky and you're working, it's because an editor has chosen you, and you're on the receiving end of the benefits of that. There's always about 50 artists then who might want to be doing that job and who aren't doing that job. And so I was in that position, the reverse side of it, for 20 years, because they've got very good people working, and I didn't fit into that for whatever reason. I was busy doing other stuff, and so it was okay. But when the new editorial team came in, I think Marcus Hearn, who I'd worked with because he had done his own reprint of the series called Century 21, reprints of some of the TV 21 work. And I'd done a cover for him, so we had a relationship anyway. And he's now the editor of Doctor Who magazine, and he rang me up one day and said, what are you up to these days? And I said, well, I'm kind of planning to retire this year, and he said, well, I think it's time we had you back in the magazine. And I thought, oh, okay. And he said, we've got a big plan and it's very secret and I can't tell you anything about it. Would you be interested? Well, yeah. Would this have to do with regeneration at all? Upcoming regeneration? He said, I can't tell you that. I can't even tell you it's not that. So, and you'll have, if you want to talk about this, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then we'll be able to talk about it. But are you interested? And I said, well, okay, it sounds kind of nice. So I went through the process of signing these things, and then he still wouldn't tell me about it because he didn't know anything at that stage, and because Bad Wolf, the production company of Doctor Who, were being extremely cautious about who they were telling anything to, and even though there had been leaks of various things coming along. But I had seen the leaks, and we kind of, we would speculate about maybe what might happen, but we didn't know. But anyway, eventually he revealed that the plan was for the regeneration after Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor. It would be a story concerning that, and I naturally assumed that was going to be Ncuti Gatwa, and I'd be doing the 14th Doctor. And he said, well, it is the 14th Doctor, but it's not him. And then he revealed it was going to be David Tennant. And I thought, oh my God, they've got a real plan going on here, and I can't tell anyone about it. It was extremely frustrating. And we more or less kept it secret right up till the publication date. But it's a lovely thing because Russell T Davies is all over this. He's decided that this is, as to all intents and purposes, it is the first Doctor's event, the 14th Doctor's adventures, his first adventure. It takes place over 1 hour. It's 13 episodes long. And because it's already out there, I can reveal that there are some Daleks involved. And so, in the words from The Godfather 3, just when I thought I was out, they dragged me back in. And I was back in Doctor Who, and I couldn't really resist it. And it was too late then, because they told me about it. And if I turned it down, they'd have killed me. So, So but there was no pressure because like I'm coming back after 20 years, and like my reputation was back in the day doing Daleks, and you know I made a reasonable fist of those. So I've got to come back and draw more Daleks, more than I've ever drawn before, and I've got to draw the new Doctor, and he's going to be the new Doctor, but he's going to be the same Doctor, but he's not going to be the same Doctor, and then I've got to draw Wembley Stadium and the 1966 World Cup. So okay, not too much to do then, and thousands of Daleks. So okay, I'll do it then. And so, as Marcus said to me after this, he said, well, it seems your plans for retirement have gone down the toilet, really, haven't they? So I'm back for the next year, and I hope you enjoy it, those of you that read it. It is going to be a very interesting ride, and I have no idea what happens. I still don't know. Episode by episode, I get to find out. So.
I suspect we're about to be shooed off any second, but going from new comics to older comics, do you feel in a way that you've kind of got a new responsibility, that there are loads of fans that will have never read these comics the first time round, and by being able to produce them in a beautiful kind of hardback format, really nice reproduction, you are kind of introducing an entire new generation to comics they've never read, to artists they may not have read before, and so you kind of become the gatekeeper, to this fantastic art and writing.
Hopefully not the gatekeeper, but the gate opener. Which is basically really what we try to do with everything, Gerry Anderson. We want to make it as accessible to as many people as possible in the way we want to enjoy it. Be that reprints and physical copies of things, it's audio, YouTube videos, the Gerry Anderson podcast, all those things to make sure people can find their own way to enjoy it. And obviously, the comics are an amazing resource because they're sort of like tens or hundreds of episodes that never made it to TV. Come with that built-in authenticity and that lovely retro futurism of the 1960s. Yes, we're already seeing people reading them for the first time in 50 years or looking at them for the first time ever and enjoying it equally but differently. So we'll keep doing what's old and what's new. And in fact, can I do a very small plug?
Isn't this entire panel quite a large
This is not a plug. In the audience there is a man called Richard James. You may know him from Space Precinct, where he played Officer Orion. And he's also currently appearing in a Sherlock Carol at the Marylebone Theatre. He didn't maybe do that, but just another area where we're bringing back lost things or old things. Dad wrote a series in 1975 that never made it, called Intergalactic Rescue, or Intergalactic Rescue 4, and Richard novelised it. So whether it's stuff that appeared in the 60s or it didn't appear in the 70s, we're trying to bring it to a new audience. So if you fancy something that's Thunderbirds meets Lost in Space, novelised by an expert author right there, then we'd love to see you and show you Intergalactic Rescue 4.
Nice, good plug. And like I said, this is a beautiful package, but it is.
Talking about you.
Oh, yes.
But 40 quid obviously isn't pocket money. After the hardbacks go out of print, are you planning like cheaper paperback editions or ebook editions for people who perhaps can't afford, the glossy hardbacks?
Again, where we can make it accessible, we will. You may think, oh, they just, save them as a PDF and press print, and then they've got a lovely book. But it's thousands and thousands of pounds of investment to get a book out there, and it doesn't break even until it's sold hundreds or even 1,000+ copies. So you're sort of, if you are interested in the hardback one and you can afford it, it's a lovely thing, and also you're essentially helping us continue the legacy. But yes, eventually, soft cover versions, ebook ones, certainly. And we've done a new Captain Scarlet graphic novel recently, which is now available on Comixology or whatever the electronic platform is. So yes, we'll always be making an effort to make things as accessible as possible to as many people as possible.
Lee Sullivan, Jamie Anderson, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And come and see us and get a free Thunderbirds hat. Yay!